friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're here for another video in the series 30 reviews in 30 days question mark, smiley face, frowny face, whatever that is. Today we're talking about Thunderstruck by Erik Larson, and this is narrative nonfiction. Erik Larson is a master storyteller in that he takes a storyline, or in this case two storylines, and weaves them together to show how they intersect, how the two main characters that are in these two different storylines, how their lives impact each other, or how one impacts the other. I know I'm being deliberately coy because I don't want to tell you too much about the story, but in the process of time I guess I will. So Thunderstruck, like I said, is narrative nonfiction. I buddy read this with Patrice Jones, Doris from Aldi Books, and Heidi from My Reading Life. Hi ladies, if you're watching. I so enjoy buddy reading these books with these ladies. Usually someone chooses a book that I might not necessarily have had on my radar. In this case, we're trying to read through the works of Erik Larson. The other ladies have read several other titles from him. I've only read The Splendid and the Vile with them, so I'm a little bit behind. But I love Erik Larson's writing, so I will read through his list at some point. But let's focus on Thunderstruck. So Thunderstruck is set in England. It's set in Edwardian England. So this is the late 1800s, early 1900s, right on the cusp of some of the political turmoil that led up to World War I. We're reading about the development of wireless technology as it was invented or discovered by Marconi. We're also reading about Marconi's life. He is of Italian origin and what it was like for him as an outsider, and the English not necessarily being particularly welcoming to outsiders, that they would accept him to some limit. And we see the discrimination that he faced because he was a young man, a young inventor, someone who was pushing a theory that most people didn't believe, or that people looked on as being evidence of the supernatural. So Erik Larson talks about the exploration of the supernatural, how people performed seances, and just the belief in psychic world and the supernatural theories that go along with that, and how some of that helped but also hindered Marconi's development. He shows a lot of Marconi's pursuit of this dream, this desire to develop wireless technology, and he shows the development, the successes, but the many failures. But again, Marconi's tireless pursuit of this dream, this challenge that he had given himself to make this work, and to almost try anything, try everything until it worked. Even if that means maybe fudging some of the data, omitting some things or changing some things slightly just to make sure that you got the go-ahead to go to the next step. So it's a pretty fascinating story, just exploring the birthplace of wireless technology. But Larson goes one better. He gives us another storyline. So there are two storylines that are alternating in this book. And we're reading about a couple, the Crippins, a young woman who wants to pursue a career as an operatic diva. She wants to be on the stage. She has this larger than life persona, and she wants to make it on the stage. And she has a husband who's a doctor who seems to be willing to finance her dream. He seems willing to put everything behind her, behind his support of her. And so we're reading about this couple and the breakdown of their marriage and what happens. And so there are these two storylines that are alternating, and for quite a bit of the beginning of the book you don't know what exactly is going to happen. But you do know that there's going to be a point where these two stories will intersect, where these characters will impact each other's lives, or at least one will impact the other. And so I don't want to tell you too much about the synopsis of the book. The publisher's synopsis does tell you what happens, what the big part of the connection is, but I don't want to do that, just in case you're one of those people who would rather, ouch, one of those people who would rather not know too much about a book before you go in. I just want to say that this was expertly written. Erik Larson is fantastic at narrative nonfiction. He makes this read like a novel, like you're reading two novels that are set in the same time, and you don't quite know how they're going to relate to each other, but you know that they're connected. And so there's a lot of history, there's a lot of science, there's a lot of culture and politics, and foreshadowing what we know now from our position in the future. Seeing how the political landscape was shifting as we're seeing the interaction between the Italians and the English and the French and the Germans, right before the decade leading up to World War I. He gives us a lot of backdrop, a lot of background of Edwardian England, and gives us real anecdotes, real stories that were happening, but tells them in such a way that they are just as riveting as if they were fictional, made up to make us feel. And so I love this book. I would highly recommend that you check it out if you haven't already. My buddy reading group, we are reading Erik Larson. Like I said, the other ladies have read more of his work. This is only my second book that I'm reading from him, but I completely want to read all his lists, all the books that he's published, and highly recommend it. Whether you like science or not, there is a bit of science explanation in the beginning, but whether you like science or not, we all use wireless technology, and so I think it's good to know its origins, the fight for the development, the fight for the acclaim, the struggle over who owns what and who's going to work with whom and who's going to say what to bolster support is fascinating. The history of something that we use and rely on so much, I think, is fascinating, or at least it's fascinating to me, and I hope it is to you too. I'd love to chat with you in the comments down below. If you've read anything by Erik Larson, if you've read Thunderstruck or any of his other books, would love to chat with you about Erik Larson's writing. And if you haven't, if you want to read his book, if you want to read Thunderstruck now because of something I said in this video, I would love to chat with you about that as well. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you do read Erik Larson, I would also recommend that you check out his notes in the back. For books, especially nonfiction books, the editing has to be really tight in order to keep the reader focused. Like, there's so much research that you could include. There is just so much that you could shove at the reader. But you also want to make sure that everything that is in the book is relevant. And so I think between Larson and his editors, I think they do a really great job of doing that. There's just enough of connectiveness in the narrative, just enough mentions of other things, other tangents that you could go down, other tangents that you could pursue, just enough there to keep you interested. But after you've read the book and you've resolved your thoughts about the characters and the things that are being discussed in the book, then I would also recommend that you check out his notes and maybe follow those tangents at that point if you like. But there are some little stories and vignettes that he includes in his notes that are just hilarious, I think. I want to share one with you. So in the process of discovery of movement and how they discovered that waves could transmit information and how you could manipulate the technology. And I say technology very loosely because at the time what they were using were just beams to transmit signals, Morse code kind of data. But they were exploring how two things could relate to each other. This is still a period where they consider that the ether was a real thing, physical presence. And so there's a story about snails having this supernatural connection, that if two snails were put in physical contact with each other, if you separate them and even separate them by great physical distance, that they would still maintain connectiveness. So he was giving the story about two Frenchmen who who had these two snails, and they put them in like a jar, and they were able to spend some time with each other, and then they were separated and put in two very different locations, and one would go on to touch something, and the other snail in the other location couldn't see what was going on, would touch the same thing. And you know, it's a really weird story. It doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. But he goes on to say, history doesn't record what happened to the snails, but because the owners were Frenchmen, you can only guess what happened. And I just leaned back when I was reading that, and I just laughed out loud, because that's hilarious. Like, you know, the French eat snails, and we don't know that these men ate their lab subjects. But it's just funny. So those are the kinds of things that you find in the notes. That's not all. Like, I don't know. I hope that didn't turn you off from reading the notes. But I just want to recommend that you read the notes. Thunderstruck by Erik Larson is the book for today. I just finished it early this morning. So I wanted to come on here and share my thoughts. I will come back soon with another video, I hope, and I hope you'll join me for it. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let's chat in the comments, and until next time, happy reading. Bye.